Can you introduce yourself and where we are?
I'm Daniel Watson. I'm the current Brigade Chief for the Deloraine Fire Brigade, and we're currently upstairs in the command room at the Deloraine Fire Station.
And how long have you had your position?
I've been the Brigade Chief for at least the last 8 years. This is my second term doing it. Usually we only run a 2-term period here because we like to keep the officers' role rotating around. But at this stage, apparently it looks like I might have to do a 3rd term, but I'll see if I can get out of that.
What sort of incidents do you guys go to?
Okay, Deloraine Brigade is the major brigade for our area, for our group, the Western Tiers group. So that makes us a structural response brigade. So any structure fire anywhere from the back of Meander through to Westbury, Golden Valley, the lakes, all that sort of area, we'll respond to that. We also do car crashes, hazmat jobs, alarms, assist ambulance, medical emergencies, flood rescues, storm damage jobs, all those sort of above. So really anything that we can be helpful for, we will go.
Do you know roughly how many you might go to over a year?
The last probably 10 years, we usually average somewhere between 80 to 90 call-outs. Last year we had our record at 167 call-outs for the calendar year. This year we're currently sitting on 122 call-outs for the year. So the last 2 years has definitely seen a large jump in the number of call-outs. So
is that anything related to anything in particular? Or?
I had a few issues with a couple of premises last year, like a protected premise and bits and pieces that we always go to, so that's part of our role. So we had a few issues with one of those, but other than that, most of it's just a general increase on the number of call-outs, particularly car crashes.
Do you have any particularly memorable call-outs?
Yeah, been here for long enough, there's definitely a lot. Some of them I do forget about, and then you just need someone to just re-jog my memory. But definitely been a lot of interesting structure fires that we've had troubles at. Some have had really good success at, some of them haven't gone according to plan, and that's why they've stuck in my mind. There's definitely a lot of interesting jobs that we've dealt with over the past sort of thing, like even flood rescues this year. As a month ago, I think they were fairly interesting and different for the brigade. Yeah.
So when you say flood rescues, what does that sort of involve?
That one involved a person driving into flood water and their car becoming disabled. It buggered the car, so we were involved in getting them back from the area that they become stranded in, with the help of some locals as well, that were on scene a bit before us and raised the alarm, and then we were able to bring them back to dry land and get them back home again.
Was using some of the equipment in the fire brigade?
Yes, yeah. So we used, we're lucky enough to have a fairly large heavy tanker here, which has proved its worth a few times in flooding sort of jobs. Obviously it's not advisable to drive into flood water, but with that bit of truck, we have found that it has become handy from getting out and helping people that are in trouble. Yeah.
Can you talk about how many volunteers and how many people are a part of this brigade?
Yeah, absolutely. Numbers are picking back up again in the brigade. They had dropped off a little bit, so we're currently sitting on about 22 members total, some of which are operational support members and some are social members, all of which are important to the brigade. We can generally rely on about 10 volunteers though for call-outs, so depending on what it is. And unfortunately during the day, like a weekday response, that can drop quite low, but that's the same with any brigade in the state. And it's the joys of being volunteers. Work and family have to come first, unfortunately. So.
How many would you like to see?
It'd be always nice to have at least 5 or 6 that can go at a drop of a hat at any stage. I know that's fairly impossible, but we have been really lucky the last year or so. We've picked up some members that have joined us from other brigades that have moved into the area. So that has definitely helped us out a little bit. Before that, we were rolling with crews of 1s and 2s during the day and sometimes in the middle of the night to certain jobs. But usually if it's something big going on, then I can usually count on everyone being able to step up and come and help out, which is always handy.
What sort of requirements do you need for people who need to do training and then be able to do call-outs?
If they've got a pulse, they'll be able to come along, that's for sure. Over the age of 18, the TFS and the Meander Brigade actually run junior programs, so we can actually start off with kids from the age of 12, I believe, through to 18, which is a really good way to give them the fundamentals, and they can actually start working towards their core training groups, and then once they become 18, they can then become an active senior firefighter or active member, and then go on and do some more training from that. But generally, we like the age between 18 and say 60 or 70 sort of thing, it definitely helps that you're able-bodied, because it can be quite a demanding job. But if you've got the right attitude and you've got a commitment to help the community, then we'll soon find a role for you somewhere in the brigade or any brigade in the state. We'd love to have you on board.
Do you face much danger?
Yeah, we do. It's not as bad as what people think it is, obviously. It's not like the American movie Backdraft or anything like that. But there is definitely situations where we do put ourselves in harm's way to save others. We have a bit of a saying here, and I'm sure a lot of brigades do, but risk a lot to save a lot. So if there is people's lives at risk, then we will push ourselves that little bit harder and a little bit further and maybe take the odd little risk. But as long as we deem it safe, like really we also look after ourselves as best we can. And the most important people there are ourselves, because if we get injured, then it's someone else that needs to be rescued, unfortunately. But yeah, it can definitely be dangerous, like running into burning buildings or chasing bushfires up through the bush or anything like that can be risky, but we're all trained, and I never ever ask anyone to do anything that I'm not personally willing to do myself. And if they feel uncomfortable doing it, then that's generally a good sign that it's about to go pear-shaped. So yeah, so we usually get a pretty good instinct what's going on.
In terms of advice for people on property or interested in fire safety, rather than volunteering for the brigade, can you provide some advice?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of really good information online. So the TFS website's a really good place to go. This time of year, like early to late spring, is a really good time to start prepping your house ready for it. We've already had a few escape burn-offs that have gotten away and threatened property and stuff like that. So it's going to dry up soon. So now's a really good time to make sure that vegetation around your house is cleared, your drains and your gutters are clear. You've got your emergency plan in place so that your children know what you've got to do, your family know where you're going to be and go. I always like to have a go bag, so just a backpack or a small bag that's always ready with some water in it, some snacks, change of clothes, stuff like that, little things that you need. So if the things do go south real quick, you can just simply grab that and get out of the house. As far as home safety goes, always making sure that your smoke detectors have got batteries in it. Daylight savings time is generally the rule of when to change your batteries around. Making sure that your doorways are clear, like your front and back doorways are cleared, rather than converting your back porch into a third bedroom so that you've only got one way in and out of the house is never a great thing. Charging lithium ion batteries are a big risk to us nowadays. Making sure that they're being charged with the right charges, they're not being thrown around and knocked around. You're not charging them in doorways, because if one of them catches fire, say in your doorway, like a laundry or something like that, then that actually blocks your access to get in and out of the house as well. So just little things like that. So not only does the TFS have all that sort of information on their own official websites and stuff like that, which is the legit best information, best source, we also have started making our own little fire hack safety laugh little videos on Facebook and on our Instagram pages as well. So if someone wanted a light-hearted way to look at stuff like that, or a different way of looking at it, then by all means check that out. But generally my best advice is to go to the TFS one for the accurate stuff.
What sort of support would you be looking for in terms of, so if someone wanted to help, how can they best do that, and what process would they undertake?
So if someone wanted to volunteer with either a volunteer brigade anywhere in the state or an SES unit, their best way to approach this is either contact the TFS if they're not sure of their own brigade area, or they can turn up to the station. A lot of the fire stations actually have a contact number on the front of them on how to join and bits and pieces like that. So it might just be a poster or something that's got a contact number on it. Facebook nowadays is a really good way. Most brigades have their own Facebook pages, so that's a really good way of doing that. If you're interested in joining, by all means, turn up, make contact, come see what it's all about. It might be right up your alley, or it might be the worst thing you've ever seen in your life as well. And that's fine, it's not for everyone. If you don't want to join full time, then there's definitely other ways to do it. Like I said, we've got social members here that come and just help the vibe of the place sort of thing and support. We've got operations support managers that take over and doing a lot of the paperwork that I'm not very good at doing, so that's really good. They check my emails before I send them out and stuff like that, make sure I'm not swearing in them too much or correct spelling and stuff. So there's lots of different roles that need to be done. It's not just all about sitting on the red truck and racing into burning buildings, that's for sure.
So if someone wants to help people on the trucks, they would get in contact with either the TFS or come into the brigade.
Correct, yeah.
And then they'd sign some forms, and do they do anything from there?
It's actually not a bad system. The TFS have done really well, and I quite like the way they do it. So basically, if someone come in to see me off the street at a training night, I usually get them come in and out a few times, so a couple of weeks. Then I'll give them, I think, a bit of paperwork. I think it's like only three forms, 3 pages. Sign that off, they'll send that away. That includes a police check. All good, all comes back clear, then you're not a murderer or anything like that, then by all means they'll start coming on. We'll then spend probably about 6 months or so, depending on how much the person wants to put in. If they just want to take it easy, then it can blow it a little bit longer, but if they want to have a real hot crack at it, we can easily knock over what we call the on-station basic training. So that's just your basic firefighting training. So once they pass that, then they're then able to come on call-outs with us, and from there then they then progress as far as they like along the tree. They can start off to be, and depending on the brigade's course, just a level 1 firefighter, and they could probably stay as a level 1 firefighter for 50 years and be very happy with doing what they're doing. Or they can continue on and progress and get more and more skills, from breathing apparatus operator to line command, sector commanders, all these sort of roles that are within the TFS. And it looks really good on your resume too. So a lot of people use it, volunteering in the TFS or SES or ambulance, as a stepping stone to either get into a full-time career with the service or the military or police or something like that as well, because it does look good on your resume. You learn a lot of life skills and a lot of useful tips as well.
Have you experienced sort of big events? Had to go out, I imagine, in a reasonably large crew?
Yeah, so...
Can you talk a little bit about that sort of experience? And
yeah, absolutely. Like? So generally when we get a call out, it usually goes out to just the local brigade. E.g. if there was a house on fire in Deloraine, then our brigade gets paged, and then usually a backup brigade, say Westbury, gets paged as well. As that fire's expanding from either a small house fire or a big bushfire, more and more brigades will come in. Quite often, especially during the summer months, we might be working at campaign fires. The Central Highland fires here a few years ago was a classic example. That went for nearly a month. We were supplying crews to that every few days as we could, and we were working with crews from all over the Tassie. There's also interstate deployments as well, of course. You often see the TFS during the summertime. If we've got our fires under control here, we'll send crews across to the mainland. A lot of those are volunteers, and the Deloraine Brigade have quite often sent members from here to go across to fight the fires in New South Wales and Victoria and places like that. So yeah, so you can quite happily go through your whole career just doing little fires with just 1 or 2 brigade turnouts, or if you wanted to, you could run up the ladder and be at fires running for months on end on the mainland. So I think it all depends on where you want to go. I haven't done any interstate deployments due to work and family commitments, so I usually find I stay fairly local in Tasmania with the deployments that I do and help out where I can. But yeah, anything, like a general call out could be anything from 5 minutes to a month generally in this area. Yeah, not often do we go for much longer than a month or 2 months, so on a single job.
Is there any areas that may be slightly more vulnerable? I imagine that there's forested areas and they might be more prone. Is that accurate? Or?
Absolutely. With our Deloraine Brigade, our main concerns or fire risks area are the Reedy Marsh area due to the topography of the land. A lot of forest out through that way and a lot of dead-end roads with a lot of houses on them. Jackie's Marsh is also a concern for us. Christmas Hills area, and also, you've got to look at Golden Valley as a bit of a risk as well, but there's not as many dwellings in there. But yeah, so we do have a lot of risky areas. We've been very lucky. These areas don't often burn, but unfortunately when they do burn well. But we are also buffeted by a lot of farming areas, so we generally don't get fires running from kilometres and kilometres away to get to us. It's usually a localised fire that starts in that area. So they're a little bit smaller and a little bit easy to control as long as we can get at them on time. But yeah, quite often, most summers will have a fire that'll go for a week or so from the initial start to the point where we're happy that it's all out extinguished.
Is there, in summer and the danger periods, is there a sort of a wind direction that seems to be more common? Or are there conditions that seem to...
Yes and no. Yeah, we normally, like anywhere in Tasmania, we normally get that northwesterly wind. I know for storms and stuff like that, if we get an easterly wind, we'll usually see a lot of tree damage because just the way that the trees grow in this area. They're not used to an easterly direction wind or a southerly wind. But usually the northwesterly wind through here, we're far enough away from the sea to be affected by sea breezes and stuff like that. So it's not too bad. It's usually fairly consistent, the wind in here, but usually this area will usually get a few fires at the start of the season, whereas people are doing their burns and a windy day might get up and stuff like that. But they're usually fairly easy to control because there's still a lot of dampness and moisture in the air, and the nights are still cool. And then late in the season, so like late February, March, is usually bad around this area too, because that's usually by the time the grass has all died off and killed off, the bushes are really dry by that stage. So they're my main worries. The days where we get like in the high 20s, low 30s, with a bit of an afternoon wind come through, they're usually the worry days. So yeah.
If people do burn-offs, because there are some people who move to the area, do they need to go through the TFS website or contact you guys, or do they just do what they do and make sure they monitor?
Yeah, depending on the time of year, we always like people to register a fire. So the TFS have got a 1-800 number which you can register your fires, and then that way, if someone happens to be driving along the highway, for instance, sees a bit of smoke, they call it in, then your fire's already logged. So rather than sending a brigade out to go and investigate a small little bonfire that you've got going and embarrassing you and wasting volunteers' time, then that sort of saves that. During permit season, obviously they'll require a permit for it. But we have found that a lot of people have come down to this area for a bit of a tree change, particularly from the mainland. So a lot of them are fairly savvy, unless they've come out of a city, and then it's a little bit more unclear what they do, and it can catch them out by surprise a little bit. Sort of thing. We've got some really switched on farmers in the area, a lot of people that know the land well. Our brigade, although we're quite a young brigade here, there's a lot of us here that have got a lot of experience and local knowledge as well, which really helps us as well. But yeah, our main concern is obviously road crashes here and structure fires is our main focus in our brigade.